Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 29 of my How to Make Video Games tutorial series. Of course, we're going to continue making Zelda today, and I'm going to show you how to animate the villains as well as create the code for the sword attacks we're going to be using. Like always, all of the code used in this tutorial is available in the description underneath this video, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so here I am back inside of Unity, and I don't know why I didn't do this before, but I want to go and change my background color to this. Okay, so now everything blends in. All right, so we got that out of the way. That was pretty easy. Now what I want to do is to create and animate some enemies for Link to fight with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get my sprites and open these up, and I'm going to get this one and this one, 0 and 1, and this is going to be used to allow my villain to walk to the right and the left. So let's just drop them down inside of there. And I am going to make sure that I am in my animations folder, and I am going to call this guy enemy walk right. All right, so that's a pretty good name, and I'm going to say save, and that's going to open up, or if I open up my animator, or actually I want the animation window to open up. So I'm going to click on window, and I'm going to come down here and click on animation. If you can't see this, view it full screen, and I'm going to grab animation and put it down here in the bottom. Whoops, let's go and grab that again and put it down here in the bottom of that. And let's also go and get the animator and throw it down there also. Okay, so here we go. I have enemy walk right. Now this is going to go way too fast. Also what I'm going to do is click on this and come over to the sorting layer and come down here and pick villain. And now you can see he shows up inside of there. I'm also going to create an empty, and I'm going to call this empty game object villains. And that's pretty good. And then grab this and drop it inside of there, and we'll just call this villain. Oh, there we are, villain. I always thought villains was spelled kind of weird, and because of that, I always spell it wrong. So let's go get rid of that, and there I have it spelled right. Okay, so I got my villain inside of here. I'm going to select the empty. I'm going to zero this out, so 0, 0, 0 across the board, and then I'm going to position my villain up here in this area because I think that looks pretty good. So let's go and grab that, and where do I want to move him to? Kind of want to move him up into this area right here. That seems to be pretty good. And then we can come in and maybe change this to 5 and change this to 6, something along those lines. And then change the 0 to 0 also. And maybe let's take it up a little bit. Change this to 7. All right, so there we go. I got my villain in place. Now if we go and play this animation, you're going to see he's running pretty quick. So what I'm going to do is change my samples to 3 instead and hit that. And now he looks like he's moving at a more reasonable pace. So I'm going to keep it like that. I'm also going to come in here and create another animation. So let's create this, and let's call this enemy walk left. Just select that and then change this to left, and then click on save. And then that's going to not show anything inside of there. I'm going to change this to 3 again. That's going to make it a lot easier to see. And I'm just moving the scroll wheel to be able to do that on the screen. And then I'm going to get 0 once again and drop it directly inside of there, and then get 1 and drop it inside of there. And then what you can do is you can actually flip these guys and everything will work perfectly fine. So just come over here and click on X flip and everything will be perfect. And if I go play, you can see that he's facing to the left, but he's walking. All right, so there we go. Now we got 2 of them done. Now I need to create enemy move down. So I'm just going to come in again, create new clip, and this is going to be enemy move down. So select that, enemy move down, and click on save. And for this one, I'm going to use sprites 2 and 3. And let's just go and change the sample already. So this is going to be sprites 2 and sprite 3. So grab that, drop it right there, and then in the 1 space next to it, grab this and drop it inside of there. And if we run it, you can see he's walking down. All right, so that's good. And let's go create another one. And this one's going to be enemy move up, enemy move up, and we can, that's what I want that to be called, yes. And for this one, we're just going to go and get sprite 4. I didn't make an additional one for the move up animation, but that's fine. Whoops, I'm gonna make sure I have everything in the right place. change that to 3, and grab 4 and drop it inside of there. Of course, you could have multiple animations, but whatever. That's what I got right now. Also, let's go and create another one, and this is going to be the idle animation. So enemy idle. And that, of course, is going to do nothing. And that is going to be, which one do I want to be idle? Probably want 2 to be idle. So let's go and grab 2. And whoops, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go get this like that. And 2, and that's going to be his idle animation. All right, so we got all those saved. And I also have my controller set up here with the animator. So all that's set up with my villain. Can also come in here and to the animations part, you can see that this is currently set up for 16 by 16 sprite 0. I could come in here and change the controller for that. So we can call this enemy controller. Well, let's just call it enemy. That's perfectly fine. And if we come over here to villain, that automatically changed. So that's a good thing. I'd like to add a box collider to my enemy now. And so I'm just going to come over here to add component, physics 2D, and box collider. And what am I going to do with this? Well, for one thing, I want to shrink the size down so that the player has like a little bit of an advantage when attacking the enemy. So let's just change that to 0.7, and we can see right there, that's the box collider part is that. I might want to change it later on if, you know, the player has a hard time killing the villain. You know, we'll see how that works out. And I'm going to leave is triggered turned off for now. And I'm going to go again, physics 2D. And this time I'm going to add a rigid body. And that's so that the villain's going to be able to dynamically bounce off of a couple other game objects that I create here in a minute. So it looks like he's pacing around. So what I'm going to do for this, I want to first off freeze the rotation for that so that it doesn't go in circles. I want to minimize mass a lot because I don't want him to have a lot of effect on his environment. I'm going to check for collisions constantly, and gravity scale, I want that to be 0, otherwise he'll slowly fall off the screen, so we don't want that. Alright, so we got all that set up. Now what I want to do is I want to create 2 empties inside of the villain's area. So I'm going to go physics and create empty, and I'm going to call the very first one villain start, and this is going to be the starting area thing that it's going to bounce off of. And I'm going to create another empty, and I'm going to call this once again villain end. Does that sound good? Yeah, it sounds good. And I'm going to drag those inside of here. So start and end, and there they are. Now I have my enemy currently set at 5.7, so I'm going to put the start like right here. So let's go to this and change it, whoops, to 5, whoops, there we go, 5 and 7, and how about we make it 4 instead? And so that I can see it, I'm going to click on this little guy up here and put a little dot. See, there you can see it's not going to show up in the game, but it's going to help us know where stuff is. So we're going to keep that there. And I'm going to want another one like right here. So that should be something like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like 10. So let's go and see if that's right. Select all those, change it to 5. Whoop, not 55, 5. And then we'll change, well, actually, this one's going to still be 7. And then this one's going to be 10, I think. So we'll get that. And then we'll go and get this and thunk. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I was aiming to do. I'm also going to want to put box colliders on this so that the villain will hit them and then we can react to it. So I'm going to go get this and physics 2D and box colliders. And I'm going to shrink these box colliders down a good bit. So let's change it down to like 0.5 and 0.5. So it's a little bit more, about the same size as this. And is trigger is going to also be, these box colliders are going to define what happens when the villain hits. And once again, box collider is trigger, and then shrink this down. So both of them are exactly the same. Good stuff. And now what I need to do is go and have the villain react. So I'm going to go into my scripts area, and I'm going to create a new script. So C# script, and I'm going to name this guy villain. So villain, and there that is. And there's villain, and then I'm going to open it up. Now, before I go over and create my villain code, I was asked by a lot of people to use Monodevelop. So how you do that is you go Edit and Preferences. This is instead of Visual Studio. Everything's the same code-wise either way. So I'm going to use Monodevelop just for the heck of it, and that's all you do. You just come in there, external tools, and then change it to Monodevelop instead of Visual Studio 2017 or 2015. Okay, so I'm going to use Monodevelop for the rest of this tutorial. All right, so here is our villain. What are we going to need to track with our villain? Well, I'm going to probably have to tweak the speed that our villain moves in. So I'm going to make a public field for that. And also, the villain's going to start going in and to the right whenever it first comes on the screen. So I'm going to go vector 2 and direction and equal to vector 2 right. So as soon as it appears on the screen, it's going to start going to the right. And then we're also going to change the direction as it continues. I'm also going to have to track if I'm chasing Link or not. And I'm going to set that as false. It's just going to basically bounce back and forth until we get to the part where we start chasing Link around. I'm also going to get a reference to an animator so that I'll be able to change the animations for my villain. And I'm not going to use this right now, but I'm going to create a game object that is going to be for Link. And let's make that public also so that I can just drag and drop that over inside of there. Another thing is rigid body. I'm going to go and define that, and then inside of awake create it, and I think that's it for now. Alright, so let's go and create awake, and this is just where I'm going to initialize everything. So let's go and get a reference to Link. I can just do it this way, game object, and then there's only going to ever be one Link, so I'm just going to do it this way. Alright, so we got that, and we're also going to have to set up the rigid body. To do that, just go get component. These are things I've done before. Rigid body, and just reference what you're trying to get a hold of. Easy peasy. And the animator. Also, get component, and there's that. And then animator. And we do this inside of awake so that we are certain that everything is set up before we call for it to be used. Alright, so there we go. We have all that set up. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to have to do here. So first off, fixed update is going to call our rigid body and change the velocity on it on a regular basis based off of the direction we want to go. And to do that, just go rigid body, and then we're going to go velocity and set that equal to direction times the speed. And it's set up so that we'll be able to change the speed to tweak the way our villain works. And the only other thing we're going to need to do is handle if our villain hits one of those triggers, villain start and villain end. So on trigger enter 2D, and we'll get what we collided with. So collider 2D, and then we have to decide what we're going to do. First, we're going to say, are we chasing or not? So if we are not chasing, what we're going to do is whenever we collide with one of those little dots, we're going to switch the animation so it faces in the opposite direction. So transform. And I could do this also, and in the next tutorial I will change the move direction. But for now, what I'm going to do is just flip it because it's nice and simple and extremely quick. There's no pause whenever you change in this way. And sometimes there's pauses whenever you're changing animations. And to do that, you just go -1 times transform and local scale X. We're only going to be changing the X, not the Y. So we'll just go transform, and we will go local scale, and Y is going to be exactly the same as previously done. And then, of course, we're also going to have to change the direction that we're going to be moving in that situation after the collision. So once again, vector 2, and we're going to just go in the opposite direction. So simple. And on the X plane, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So there we go. And oops, direction Y. And I spelled direction wrong. Why did I do that? And there, it's corrected. And is there anything else I need to do? I'm going to throw an else in here, but I'm not going to use it right now. That's going to be whenever we are chasing Link, and I can't think of anything else. So let's just save that and jump over and test it. All right, so here we are, and you can see our villain down here, and let's play this and see what happens. I'm going to zoom out here first off, and we can see our villain, and let's run it. And you can see he's going over there. He hits, he changes direction. All right, so good stuff, exactly what we wanted. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a new way that we can go and animate a sword attack for Link. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I went and created a weapon empty just by going create empty, calling it weapon, and then dragging it under Link. And what that's going to allow us to do is to go in there and change the weapon that's inside of it. I'm going to then also create another empty, so create empty. And I'm doing it this way just so I can show you a different way of doing an animation than I've done it before. All right, so we went and created another sword. Now what we're going to do is, you know what, I'm going to delete that. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to sprites, and sprite 81 is my sword. So let's go and get it. And I'm going to zoom out, grab 81 up here and drag it directly inside of there. And that is going to be our sword. Correct? Yes. And all I need to do is change the direction that it's facing. So I'm going to go and select this guy and change its name to sword. And also I want to make sure that weapon is zeroed out, which it is. So there's 0, 0. And I'm going to need to position that. So let's go and get our sword, and I want its layer to be the same as Link. And there you can see it is right there. And then we need to move it. First off, we need to flip it. So I'm going to come up here to this guy, click on that, and I'm going to go and completely flip. Whoops, I have to select it first, and there it is right there. So we're going to come in and flip it. Whoops, keep grabbing the wrong thing. There we go. And we're going to turn it completely upside down, and that should be negative 180 to make it 100% the same. So let's just change it to negative 180, and then it'll be nice and clean. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it. Oops, I don't want to grab it on that plane. Let's switch it back over here. Grab this guy, and I'm going to position it. Now you're going to see that the sword is behind Link, and if we click on Link, we're going to see that we have Link in the sorting layer and the ordering layer is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select sword and change this to 1, and now the sword is on the same plane. And another thing that's interesting to know is you're not actually able in the code to change the order in the layer. So what we're going to be able to do is change the Z, and that's going to allow us to move it up or down in regards to Link, you know, and see there it appears. So we're going to make sure that that is basically less than 0. And then it's going to appear on top. But we're going to change that here in a minute. And what else do I want to do? On the Y plane, I'm going to set this to 0. And then on this plane right here, I'm going to set that to 3 and see how that looks. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, so whenever Link is attacking, he's not going to be running around with this, but only when he attacks is the sword going to appear on the screen and go, and then, you know, like stab things. All right, I'm just trying to show you a different way of animating. All right, so we got that set up. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, yes, I want to add a box collider to the sword. So I have the sword selected. I'm going to come over here, add component, physics 2D, and box collider, and we're going to obviously shrink this down a lot. So I think the offset, I'm going to leave this be 0, and then this one is going to be 0.5, and then I'm also going to change my size down to like 0.35 and 0.75, something like that. So there, it's only going to collide with that area right there, which is going to be the blade. All right, so that looks good. I don't think I need to do anything else with it except write all the code to make the sword show up in the right position. So I'm going to jump back over into Monodevelop and write all that code. Okay, so here we are in Link 2. What am I going to need to do? Well, I'm going to need a reference to both the weapon game object as well as the sword game object. Let me just jump over and verify the names on those. Okay, so they are uppercase weapon, lowercase, or uppercase sword. Okay, good. Back. So where am I going to start putting this stuff inside of here? I think I'm going to put it right here, obviously right after the animator. Okay, so I'm going to go game object, and I'm going to call this weapon game object, and I'm going to do the same for the sword. So sword game object, And then am I going to need anything else? You know what? I'm going to track the direction that I want to attack with an enum. So I'm going to call this attack direction. And then I'm going to have obviously left, right, up, and down are going to be my different attack directions. And then I'm specifically going to have attack direction, and I'm going to call that attack direction. All right, so I got that set up, and that looks good. Now down inside of awake, I am also going to throw in or go and create or get references to those game objects. So weapon game object is going to be equal to, and I can find it by name. So we can go game object and then find, and this is going to be weapon. So we got that. And then I'm also going to do the same for sword. So sword game object is equal to game object and find, and this is called sword. All right, so I got my game objects all ready to work with. Now what I need to do is, let's come down inside of here, and there's fixed update. This is where we're going to be making a lot of our different changes. And so animator play S, that is going to be, let me see here. Oh, S is going to be my walk down. So what I'm going to want to do here is whenever he walks down, I'm going to want to set my attack direction equal to attack direction down, and then that'll track everything for me, so that'll make everything really, really nice and easy. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for up, which is next. So we'll come in here and paste that inside of there, except this is going to be up. So it makes it very easy, and then I'm going to use a function down here to have everything work. And basically what I need to do is just rotate the sword depending upon whatever direction, Link is going in. So we have that. And then for D, actually got rid of this flip animation. I'm leaving it in there. It's just commented right now. And I might get rid of it altogether later on. But okay, so whoops, let me just do paste. And in this situation, it's D, so that means he's going in the right direction. So what I'm going to do is just make the sword appear on the screen and then disappear. And A is going to be the left direction. So right here, paste that inside of there, and then change that to left. All right, so that's pretty simple stuff. Now what I'm going to need to do is go down and actually allow them to trigger the attack. And I think what I'm going to do is have that occur whenever the link or whenever the user clicks on return. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if input get key, and to reference return, the return key, you go key code and return, and that is going to give me the return key. And whenever that happens, I'm going to call a function that I'm going to create here right next called link attack, and link is going to attack the whatever is right in front of them. So let's create that function. So link attack doesn't receive anything because it doesn't need to. It's going to make judgments based off of the enum that we have set. So what I want to do is I'm going to create another function also. And what it's going to do, it's going to use a coroutine here. So what I need to do is go I in numerator. Make sure it's a numerator and not enumerable. Totally different things. And animate sword is what it's going to be. And what it's going to do is it's going to receive a float, which is going to represent how much I want to rotate the sword whenever I display it on the screen. And also if we have a vertical movement that we want to make. All right, so we have that set. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the animate sword function here to get this out of the way. Very first thing I want to do is make the sword appear. And how you do that is you reference the sword game object, and then you go get component and renderer, and then you go enabled and set it to true. Okay, so that is going to flash the sword on the screen. Then after that, I am going to go weapon and game object and transform. And here what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that and rotate it. So rotation, rotation. and set it by calling quaternion. And then I'm going to get 0 and rotation. Okay, so that is how, why do I keep spelling rotation wrong? Okay, so there we go. So that is going to rotate it in the right direction. And then I'm going to need potentially to move it vertically. And that's going to be whenever it flips from Link moving downwards to upwards. Whenever he starts moving upwards, obviously the sword's going to go in the other hand, in the same hand. So to do that, I'm going to go transform and position equal to new vector 2 or vector 3 and transform position and X and also transform position Y plus whatever the vertical movement is that I want to have done, and then transform position Z. All right. So that is going to handle that. And then what I need to do is wait a second before hiding the sword again. To do that, you go yield, return, and new, wait 4 seconds, and point to F, and we'll test out if that's a long enough period. We just want it to flash on the screen. We don't want it to hang around for a while. So we'll go get the sword game object and get component once again, and get the renderer and go get enabled and set it to false. All right, so we have all of that set up. Now what we can do is we can go up inside of link attack and we'll define everything inside of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a big switch statement inside of here. So I'm going to go switch, and depending upon what the attack direction is, I'm going to do different things. So I'm going to say case attack direction is down. Well, in that situation, I'm going to go start coroutine and animate sword, and I'm not going to do anything with it because that's how it's set up. So we don't have to make any changes in the situation in which we're going down because that's the default that we have already set for ourselves. And then break. Okay, so there that handles if we're going down. Now let's handle attack direction, and if we are going to the left. And I actually paused for a second there to figure out what I'm going to need to do rotation wise, so you didn't have to worry about it. It was just basically moving the sword on the screen and then verifying what the, like by hand, and then seeing how much I needed to rotate. So not rocket science. All right, so animate sword, and then let's get that off of the screen there. And then sometimes whenever I do or show something really, really big like that, it won't go away. Or, I mean, when I increase my font size really big. So, all right, so animate sword and then break. And so we got that. And of course, we're going to also have to do the same for the right. So let's just come in here, do this, and then change this to right. And in this situation, this is going to be 90. And then this is going to be perfectly fine. We're not going to need to do anything with that. So change that back to 0. And then we will have to do one more for up. So let's change this to up. And this is going to be 180 this time. So 180. And then this is going to be 0 also, if I did everything right. And I think that's it. So let's save that. Everything looks good. Jump back. All right, and now we're going to test if we are able to make the sword appear or not. So let's run it. And there's Link. It's not working. Why isn't it working? Yeah, we'll figure it out. I see what I did. Inside of this area right here where right before we have the Link attack, what I need to do is I need to go and get my sword game object and get component, and the renderer, and call for it to be false so that it doesn't show on the screen. All right, so that's pretty simple. And guess what? I need to do exactly the same thing inside of the awake function whenever it's called. All right, so just place that in there and save it. And here we are with Link, and let's test to make sure everything is working out good. All right, so yep, there's the sword. It's appearing well where I want it to be. It's going up, it's going down, and so forth and so on. All right, so we are able to attack. We got villains and so forth. And what I'm going to do in the next part of the tutorial is get all of the other weapons to start working and also equip our villains with weapons. So like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.